Cupido, and I'm the regional director of an organization called Natural Justice. We are a Pan-African organization. You can go to the first slide. So as I say, I'm the regional director for the Southern African half of Natural Justice. Second slide, please. We are a Pan-African organization dedicated to working on behalf of communities and the environment. The reason that we are talking about this case is because we are actually one of the applicants involved in opposing this case in the East African courts. Sorry, my apologies for that. And so we work with communities directly impacted in both Uganda and Tanzania, which is where the pipeline will be going through. My own background is as a human rights lawyer and environmental lawyer for the past 20 years. But as I say, our primary kind of link to this case is that we are actually one of the applicants in the case, along with 3 other SEOs. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide after that. So this is the East Africa crude oil pipeline. It's a 1,445 kilometer pipeline which goes from Uganda to the port of Tanga in Tanzania, from where the oil will be exported. And the pipeline, it's about 900 miles, for those of you that don't use the metric system. Once it's completed, if it's completed, it will be the longest electrically heated pipeline in the world. So just some sort of top line figures around this is that there's an estimated 100,000 people that will be affected through forcible relocations, 10,000 farmlands, so predominantly small scale and women farmers will be affected because the pipeline will actually be going through, the forcible relocations will happen because it will be going through people's farmlands. Next slide, please. So in terms of who the perpetrators are of this environmental crime, Total Energies, once again, really the ugly hairs, they will have 62% shareholding. The Ugandan and Tanzanian governments will have 15% shareholding. And the Chinese National Offshore Oil Corporation will have 8% shareholding. And some of the financiers for this, to the tune of $3 billion US, is Stanbic of Uganda, which is a subsidiary of a South African bank called Standard Bank. Then there's Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation of Japan, and then again the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, the ICBC. There are actually about 24 other banks that weren't going to get involved in this, but they've kind of backed off because of some of the more controversial aspects of this pipeline. Next slide, please. So, what's at stake in terms of the rights of nature and the threats to natural systems and biodiversity? Because as you saw on that map, the massive area that this pipeline will traverse, these are just some of the top line kind of impacts that will have. So 11 listed conservation areas, listed by the IUCN, 230 rivers and streams, which include the Wambabaya tributary, the River Kafu, and several others. It will also be going through a number of forest reserves and other protected areas, including 400 square kilometers of the Bugoma forest, which has been protected for the last 90 years, and which contains one of Africa's largest populations of chimpanzees. It will go through several Ramsar wetland sites, including the Murchison Falls, which is also, the Murchison Falls, by the way, is also a sacred site for people in Uganda, the Bukama people of Uganda, and the Alberta Delta wetland system. The threatened species include the African golden cat, African elephant, hippopotamus, lions, 17 species of threatened birds. The pipeline itself will at some points run as close as 33 kilometers to Lake Victoria, which is a water source for millions of people in Africa, and is home to countless species of fish, birds, and so the damage of this pipeline is actually just immense, and it's beyond comprehension, really, that they would even contemplate such a thing. Next slide, please. In terms of the impacts on climate, again, we are talking about a complete disaster. It's carbon bombers. I think Daniel used that phrase earlier. Because the burnt oil will release up to 34 million tons of CO2 emissions a year. And then over the life cycle of the pipeline itself, including the construction phase and the value chain, we're talking about 377.6 million metric tons of carbon. And they're listed, by country. Next slide, please. So these are some of the indigenous, I would say, conventions and rights that we are relying on. It is our contention that the project violates the East African Community Treaty, which is the treaty which establishes the East African Community, the Protocol for Sustainable Development for the Lake Victoria Basin, the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, the UN Framework, African Charter on Human People's Rights, and the African Convention on Conservation of Natural Resources. Next slide, please. So this again is just a very brief sort of overview of who's taking on the case. So there's 4 CSOs, including ourselves, from Africa, from Uganda and Tanzania, and the respondents are the Ugandan and Tanzanian governments. And what we are asking the courts to do is we are seeking an urgent injunction to stop the pipeline effectively. I'll stop there, but I'm happy to take questions from the judges to elaborate further. Thank you.